I don't often talk about TV shows from the 90s. For whatever reason, most of the shows that I absolutely love are from earlier decades. However, it feels wrong not to spend just a few minutes talking about the CBS television adaptation of The Flash that premiered in the fall of 1990. After all, I had been a big fan of the Flash comic book character since childhood. In fact, I distinctly remember bringing this comic book to school one day, way back when I was in the 3rd grade. It seemed like it would be appropriate material for our free reading time that day. Unfortunately, Mrs. Crosby disagreed and that book was confiscated. Side note, the Neil Adams artwork on the cover here is pretty darn amazing. And the Flash did make some animated appearances on one of my favorite cartoons from the 70s, the Super Friends. If I remember correctly, just one appearance during season 1, but in later seasons, when the show became the challenge of the Super Friends, the Scarlet Speedster appeared quite a bit more often. And truthfully, the less said about this television appearance by the Flash, the better. I don't even know what to say about this Hanna-Barbera live-action debacle from the late 70s. This may have been the low point for DC comic book characters on TV. So let's flash forward a decade or so to this little movie. Yep, anyone who was around in 1989 remembers the second coming of Batmania. Everyone was wearing t-shirts and baseball caps with bat symbols on them. Quite frankly, Batman was everywhere. And because Tim Burton's movie starring Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson was such a blockbuster hit, it only made sense that TV executives would start looking for ways to cash in on the momentum created by The Dark Knight. So, 1 year later, CBS would debut their answer to the question, how can I get in on some of that Batman action? I still remember picking up the fall preview issue of TV Guide that year and immediately turning to Thursday so I could read what they had to say about The Flash. It was the program that I was most excited for that year. From everything I could tell, it seemed pretty darn encouraging. I was pretty darn excited by the fact that you could tell that the producers of the show were trying to emulate the look and feel of Batman. Danny Elfman, the composer of the Batman soundtrack, well, he wrote the title theme. And that costume, it was just so cool looking. There was also just a little bit of a 40s crime noir movie look to it as well. All in all, it was perhaps a little more dark than you would expect for The Flash, but as the season wore on, the show definitely became more of its own thing. The two main characters on the show, Barry Allen, also known as The Flash, and Tina McGee, a scientist and friend who maybe, just maybe someday might be more than just a friend, were played by John Wesley Shipp and Amanda Pays. I didn't know much about Shipp other than he'd been on a couple of soap operas, but I remember Amanda Pays very well from her turn on the futuristic television show Max Headroom that she was in with Matt Frewer for a couple of years in the mid-80s. Actually, Max Headroom was way more than just a TV show. The character was part of the pop culture tapestry of the mid-80s. He appeared in commercials, movies, hosted a music video show, well, and even pitched New Coke. But by the time the 90s rolled around, Max was pretty much gone. But in his place, we had The Flash. The TV series is notable for a number of things, but I have to believe that perhaps its greatest accomplishment is the casting of Mark Hamill, Mr. Luke Skywalker himself, as the Trickster. It was on this show where I feel like Mark found his voice for perhaps his greatest role of all time. Yep, we're talking about the Joker on Batman the Animated Series. I know that Romero, Nicholson, Ledger, and Phoenix have all been great as the Clown Prince of Crime, but the animated version, as voiced by Mark Hamill, in my mind, is the truest, greatest version of the character to date. Watching those classic episodes and listening to Hamill's incredible voice work is still such a pleasure for this Batman fan. And wouldn't you know it, the makers of the current version of The Flash that airs on the CW network, well, they must be fans as well, given that Hamill's Trickster has returned to vex the Flash on a couple of different occasions. And a reimagined version of Tina McGee has become something of a recurring character on the new show as well. While I don't always love the direction that some of these DC superhero shows go on the CW network, I do love that these programs often find a way to pay homage to the shows and actors that paved the way for them in the past. And I think the best example of this is the casting of Shipp on the new Flash. First as Barry's father, Henry Allen, and then later on as an alternative version of the Flash from a parallel Earth. Yep, the Golden Age Flash, Jay Garrick. And then last year, during the CW's Elseworlds crossover event, Shipp once again played the Flash from the 1990 TV series. How cool is that? The same exact character, once again on television, almost 30 years later. And I'm not sure how the 1990 television version of The Flash might fit into this year's CW crossover event, Crisis on Infinite Earths. But I am fairly certain that Shipp will make some sort of appearance, along with Burt Ward, Linda Carter, and many other stars from superhero shows that have come and gone. You know, ultimately the 1990 version of The Flash didn't last all that long. Just a single season. The ratings weren't horrible, but when you have a big budget show like The Flash, the network executives expect immediate, big budget results. Still, The Flash is even today still worth watching. Not every episode is stellar, but there are more hits than misses, and those Trickster episodes, well, they're just super cool. Alright, one more pick. Let's end with this one. Again, the Trickster from the original Flash TV series, along with his devoted and demented sidekick, Prank, who I just have to believe was at least a little bit of the inspiration for one of DC Comics' most infamous bad girls, Ms. Harley Quinn. Anyway, do you remember the 1990 television version of The Flash? Please share your memories in the comments section, and while you're at it, I'd love a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. And I'd be honored if you would consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.